Welcome to this edition of Building the DMV presented by Selective Hauling. I am your host, Jill Sorensen. I am very pleased to be joined today by our guest, Chief Operating Officer of Cooper Building Services, Pamela Johnson. I am going to bring her in right now. Hello, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello. Good to see you. Good to be here.
So, Pamela, you have been in the construction industry for over 30 years, and it's been so great just speaking with you and emailing with you leading up to this conversation. And it's, as you know, I'm very involved in Women in Construction and the Women in Construction Conference here in Washington, D.C. So it's always great to speak to a woman who has really just grown up in this industry. And it's fascinating and at the same time empowering. And it's wonderful to be able to speak with someone like you with as much experience and success as you have had. And it's great for our audience to be able to hear all of your experiences as well. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you.
So first of all, let's start from the beginning. How did you know, or when did you know that you wanted to build?
Well, I would have to say that build specifically is something that evolved. I would say that I started off, you'd say when I was in high school, I was good in science and math. And of course, everyone tells you if you're good at science and math, you should be an engineer. And so, okay, so I followed that. And I did go into engineering, majored in that, and, got a degree in engineering. First came while I was in school, I did these internships with large companies that at the time did nuclear power plants. And so I had internships designing nuclear reactors, so forth, for nuclear containment buildings and things like that. And I while doing the design piece, they would take us on tours of the construction, and I always wanted to do construction, but I'm a girl, right? So, and that was the 80s, and people wanted to direct me in a certain direction to be more of a design engineer, and I did do that. So as I was a design engineer, bridge engineer, I worked to at some point convince people to let me be a builder. And but it took time because I actually worked as an engineer, designing things as a structural engineer. And eventually I was able to be taken seriously and move over to being a builder. It took time, but yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So, just looking at your resume, you're from DC. Went to Howard University, and there's your civil engineering degree, right? And eventually getting into actual construction. But when you look back at Howard, are there specific professors or mentors that you can look back and say, these people really mentored me? Because mentors in this industry, because hands-on experience is so important, mentors become very important. Who do you look back and say, those people, without them, I wouldn't be here?
So first, I'll tell you that everyone who knows me will say, well, she's not from D.C. I'm actually from Virginia, from the Hampton Roads area, Norfolk, Virginia. Okay. I came to D.C. as a freshman at Howard University. And as a freshman, what I'll say about Howard and my experience as a student, to say mentor would not necessarily be what I would say the experience was. Mm-hmm. What I would say is I think that we mentored each other as students. We were close. We came close to each other. We looked out for each other. But that engineering program that I was a part of, we worked. They made us really work for it. I cannot say that they gave us a lot of mentoring and help and support as professors. They made us fight for it. So every bit of that degree from Howard, I fought for it. But when I want to say mentoring, we as a class the graduating class is the students. And you'll find this if you talk to any Howard engineers who came out when I did. I'm not going to say that that's the way that it is now, because I don't think that it is that way now. But we would say we mentored each other. We supported each other. Those are lifelong friendships. But I don't think that the faculty specifically mentored us through the engineering program. They made it as hard as they could make it.
Trial by fire, if you will, then.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So now you mentioned internships and, nuclear reactor facilities and that type of thing. But your first job, I read, and so correct me if I'm wrong, your first job was as a bridge engineer in Wisconsin. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you're from Hampton Roads. You come to DC, you go to school. Now all of a sudden you go to Wisconsin.
Yes.
very different climate. And you're a bridge engineer. What was that experience like for you?
So professionally, it was a good experience. We bridge abutments and piers, doing structural analysis and designing that. I think that experience was really great strictly from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, I got to tell you, I was miserable. It was cold.
Oh yeah.
The winters were below zero, snowed every day. I lost a lot of weight just because I made sure I got to work every day and I lived the life. I learned a lot, but I don't think that it was necessarily the social environment from somebody in their 20s. Who's from the South, who goes to college in DC, then you show up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I just got up, went to work every day, and went home. Went to work every day, but it was a good professional experience. I'll say that.
Absolutely. And I can relate. My first job was in Duluth, Minnesota, and I was coming from California by way of Rhode Island, but it was but from a professional standpoint, it was you pretty much had to do your work because there was not a lot else to do but do your work.
That's right. You make the best of it.
Exactly. So you do obviously come back to DC. Was it a priority for you to get back to DC? Were you looking at other places in the United States, maybe even going back home to the Hampton Roads area?
No, I really wanted to come back to DC. Friends were still here in this region, and I felt that I would be able to have some kind of a balanced life if I came to DC. And so I just at the time I just sent out a lot of resumes and called people and did whatever I could, and I ended up getting a job with an organization that needed a structural engineer. And that's what I was. I knew how to do design and analysis and so forth, and that's what they needed. And I was young, and it was, a little early on with the whole computer writing code, and they wanted me to develop or to write. They were doing all of their calculations and structural analysis by hand. And they wanted me to put together the program to do the structural analysis of their facility. And that's what I did. So I came back and I was the structural engineer on staff, wrote all of the code to do the structural analysis, and highly technical. But that particular job eventually turned into a traveling job where they went all over the country to do evaluations and analysis, and I eventually joined that group. So it turned out to be a good experience.
So when you look back then at that time of your life, you really started to make a name for yourself a little bit later in the education space. How did that come about with the building of schools and that type of work?
Well, I eventually went to another company that did. They were a very large. I guess they were. I don't want to say construction manager because those terms have evolved. But they were an engineering company who also did program management, eventually evolving into construction management. But they had eventually had a contract with. Actually, it was a military. where they had to do facilities assessments for residential facilities for the for military housing.
Okay.
And we had to go around and do surveys of all of those military facilities, and it was worldwide. So I was responsible for Germany, Italy, and Turkey. And that's what we did. So we assessment of facilities. We did that contract over several years. Then we found out that Baltimore City Public Schools needed facility assessments for their school inventory. We had been doing that for the Pentagon, I guess, at the time, had that solid experience of doing that. So we went out for that job, for that contract with BCPS. I think they have 2 S's on there now. And we won that contract to do facility assessments of all the Baltimore City Public Schools. That was the first time that I did school. It was facility assessments. And have since done facility assessments in DC and other places, and established those relationships and those clients. That was during the time when these school districts needed to justify to everybody, please spend money, because also the urban areas, Baltimore, DC, and what have you, people weren't really trying to spend money to upgrade schools. So these facility assessments were associated with, do the facility assessment. Give us justification for the need to do school construction to upgrade them. So it was all a part of a big program. This is the state of the facilities. Then we have to go and get funding, whether or not it be a bond program or however it's done.
Sure.
And so since I was in early on doing the assessments, and I just wound up ultimately working for builders who, now it's a matter of I say God's work. Now it's a matter of wanting to work in these areas to do whatever we could, because there was a lot of us. There's several of us. I wasn't the only one, but whatever we could to put our professional expertise into making sure now it's God's work because it's children, right, in schools,
right,
doing whatever we could to make sure that the roofs were stable, the roofs, windows, boilers, chillers, and that's how I got into it. After I did the facility assessment, then you saw just how you had the people working at facilities who loved them and worked hard to keep them clean, but they were falling apart.
Right.
And having my heart was in it then, wanting to make a difference for those cities, knowing that I had a particular expertise and I worked for the big company, so I was going to stay there and make sure that whatever work was done was successful. That's the best way I could describe it.
Sure. What did you see, or when did you see, or where did you see that shift then from these neglected buildings to it becoming more of a priority that, yes, we do need these actual physical spaces for kids to be healthy and to work and to be, better than just functional? Where did you see that shift happen and why?
I think that the shift happened in the U.S. I think they had this thing on in New Jersey, the Abbott School District. That's stuff back. I think that was the 80s, 90s. Some suing the state, I guess, in New Jersey to work in certain regions of the city. Then that one, New Jersey picks up, and then Philadelphia gets their program.
Yeah.
And then DC winds up getting their program. Baltimore gets their program. So I think the country had to evolve, and the leadership, brave leadership. And I think, I say all of the different mayors in DC and so forth, the as it evolved, and I would say along the East Coast, but LAUSD, they were a part of evolving it. Los Angeles, all around the U.S., everybody was trying to figure this out, how to do it. And I just happened to be there as it was happening around the U.S. And in the D.C. region, the mayor at the time, and then they had the people building the sports arenas and so forth. They brought the folks over to do the schools, and it was the climate of the U.S. We got to do something about the kids. For the longest time we said it's for the kids. That's what everybody said. But they follow each other. School districts follow each other, and it has to happen in the U.S. A group thought with everybody saying we have to do something about it.
So you mentioned too relationships kind of early on when you were doing the facilities assessments, and when you look back at the relationships you formed then, and certainly I want to talk to you about relationships, in your current job and a little bit later in the conversation also. But when did you start to realize how important relationships were or are in this industry?
Well, the truth is that you can't do in construction. You have to know who you're hiring, right? So if you're just coming in cold and they don't know who you are, they've never known who you are, and construction is expensive, and you don't want to do it twice, and you don't want to, just be out there giving work to people who just say, I can do it. I realized at some point that I needed to be somebody who could do it. And I needed to be able to know the people so that they believed I could do it. Yeah, it's everything is about relationships. Everything is about being able to trust the people that you are hiring. So, learning the Baltimore City Public Schools, that first project was talking to the people with the facilities. Coming to DC, those first projects were meeting the people who are responsible for facilities in DC. And then they have to know what contractors are out there, who I can actually get here to do it. And they meet us, they talk to us, they find out what skill sets we have. How do we structure the RFP so that we can maximize the best companies to come here? And that's really what you have to do. You can't just try to put out some bid to try to get the cheapest people around, because you're not going to be satisfied with what you're getting. You need to know what contractors are out there. We need to talk to you. They need to talk to us. And structure your procurement so that you can maximize the best that's out there. And the way you do that is by establishing relationships with everybody that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. You encapsulated it perfectly. When I look down at some of the education projects that you have been a part of, I mean, this is really just a partial list, I'm sure, but I want to make sure that our audience understands the magnitude of I guess, your work and what you have been a part of. When you look at Mann Elementary School, the Phelps Career High School Modernization, School Without Walls Modernization, Eastern High School Modernization, Tacoma Education Campus Reconstruction, Raleigh Hall renovation at Marymount University in Arlington. Like I said, that's a partial list of just what I found in my research. Is there something in particular, an education project in particular, whether it's on that list or not, that really stands out to you for any particular reason?
So I would say, I'm going to give you more than one. Okay.
Okay.
So first I would probably say Phelps, which I think that was on that list.
Yeah.
And Phelps to me represented a transition of my work in DC. I think prior to Phelps, we did a lot of roof replacements, window replacements, boiler replacements, and so forth, a lot of work like that. Mm-hmm. When we did Phelps, it was the city trying to embrace, I guess there was a long time in DC where, they had where there was issues with paying companies on time and issues with attracting a lot of diverse different types of businesses. And so a lot of people didn't want to do work in DC. Mm. So they had started that was like the administration has started trying to pull together, how do we attract large contractors and get people to want to do construction? How do we change the program a bit? And Phelps was one of those projects that we won when they were going through that transition. And Phelps, while we were doing Phelps, it transitioned from, the DC political environment transition. We were there from the transition. And what I can say about that project is that from political and private architects, everybody worked together, no egos. It was just about, okay, we got to get this done. So everybody, politics out the door, egos out the door. What do we do? And that was just to me, just a wonderful experience of everybody working together to get that school built. And it just turned out to be just everybody involved with it made a contribution because we knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
Another one that had a similar, which isn't on the list, is the Brooklyn Middle School. I thought that one, that community really wanted a middle school, and everybody, egos out the door. Let's figure out how to get this community this middle school. I felt that was another one. And then I'll say that because I did do Philadelphia's school district, and I did one of those New Jersey Abbott school districts. I did those as well. And those are meaningful to me just because of what they represented. Both of those New Jersey schools and Abbott School District, it was really about, okay, we got to get this done. These kids need this. So I just felt like I was using my brain and intelligence and experience to do what this client needs for their client, the kids. I know it sounds really corny.
Not at all.
That's what it's been about, doing schools, and that's why I've enjoyed it all these years.
How much does that help to have that passion? Some people can go through work and it's 9 to 5, and in construction it's 5 to 5 basically, right? Yeah. How important is it to have that passion for what you do every day now for 32 years?
Yeah, you have to have it. I mean, it can't just be a job. You have to be passionate about it. You got to get angry with each other and yell at each other and call each other names and so forth. I think otherwise, because it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
It's not. And, it's solving problems, and, there's no day is the same, and things are always going to fall apart and go wrong. And you just have to care enough about it to just drill down and figure out, how do we get this done? And if you have people there who don't have that passion and commitment to it, it is very frustrating. So I think that, what I tell everybody, this business isn't made for everyone. I had this woman who worked for me a few years ago who would say, she would come back to, as a builder, the buck stops with the builder, right? Architect can say, okay, figure it out in the field, and the program manager can say this, but the builder would say, we got to build it. So I told her, look, she would say, she would come to me and say, these are these notes, who's going to do this? And I'm like, you have to do it. You got to figure it out. So you got to sit there and figure it out, because there's no one else you can pass it. Everybody can pass it off. But when it comes to us, we can't pass it off anymore. We have to figure it out. So it's a certain kind of personality that takes on that responsibility and the stress, and the fact that everybody's yelling at you all the time and everything is your fault. You're the contractor, and they think you're trying to get money that you don't deserve, and they're always trying to get you to do stuff that they didn't pay for. You got to have some passion about it to get through it day after day.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's rewarding.
Yeah, and especially, to see the project finished, and especially in the sense of schools, and to see the kids in there learning. I mean, that's the ultimate reward, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anytime I ride past any school or any building that I have done anything with, I have to stop and gasp a little bit just to look at it.
Sure.
Because it is very satisfying to do it. Yeah.
So when you, now in your current role, so Chief Operating Officer at Cooper, yes. How does this role, you've been in this industry 32 years, as we've said. Mm-hmm. How does this role differ from your previous project executive jobs, your previous management jobs, et cetera? Is this kind of the ultimate build up to what you've worked for?
Yeah, I think it's the right direction. Now I'm responsible for the office and strategizing to build our brand, grow the business, making sure whereas before I was responsible for a group within the office, a group of projects. Now it's all the projects. I used to tease with everybody and say, well, I'll stay in my lane. These people may not be doing their part. But my lane is over here. And as long as my stuff is done, I can't put it off on anybody. I can't put anything off on anybody, because ultimately that office has to be successful based on the direction that operational direction that I provide. I have the CEO who, partnership. He'll set a vision. We set the vision together. We work together. But at the end of the day, the expectation is I'm the operational lead, and how we sell ourselves, how we do the work that we do, profit, revenue, that making sure that I generate that properly, that falls on me. And it was the right next step for me from where I was before.
Do you ever take a moment? I know that you said, when you drive past a school, there's a little bit of a gasp there, and to see the work that was done. But when you look back at your career as a whole, and certainly not even close to over by any stretch of the imagination, but you do have some nice perspective. So when you look back, are you able to say, wow, look at everything that not just you have accomplished, but, we as your team and your teams in the past? And do you allow yourself that moment?
I was thinking about that. At this point, still think I have so much to do. That probably what I can say is that when a building is completed, or a project is completed, or something is completed, there's a sense of satisfaction of, wow, we completed that. We did that. Mm-hmm. Do I look over my entire career and say, whew, you have just done so much? No. I cannot say that I do that. Simply because I feel, you have, if you only heard the goals that I had when I was 18.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm still pushing forward.
Can you share any of those goals that you had when you were 18? Are there any that are still out there? Or are there some that are like, wow, what was I thinking that, my life now went over here instead?
Well, I always wanted to make a difference, a significant difference. I thought, owner of large something great. And, having an impact on humanity. Yeah. And you always have to, I guess an impact on humanity is one person at a time, every piece at a time. And I can say that, I guess the work that I do, I've made people's lives better, the schools and so forth. It wasn't the vision about it that I had, but, you can say that everything that you do, if you're able to be, work with people, and they're, from having worked with you and known you, they have a different perspective and an open mind, something that they didn't have before, then sure, it's an impact on humanity. Wasn't what I was thinking, but yeah.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit here. Your work certainly has had a very large impact, not just in the physical space, but certainly of all those students that attend those schools, and certainly all the other projects you've worked on. But I'll tell you what, you are quintessential construction industry person, where you are just so modest and so humble, and it's awesome. It's phenomenal. I think you're, like I said, you're not giving yourself enough credit, Pamela. I'll hold you up a little higher on the pedestal than you will yourself. Okay.
I appreciate it.
So now that you have, like you say, you're headed in the right direction as far as this was the right next step for you in your career.
Yes.
Knowing what you went through at Howard, that it was so difficult, the students, mentor each other instead of sort of having someone, mentor you guys or help you guys along. How do you think that impacted you? Do you find that you are trying to mentor, more young people coming in, or has that helped you maybe understand maybe they do need to learn a little more trial by fire?
Well, I would never say that anybody should have to go through what I've gone through. I'm not going to ever say that. I do think that mentors are important. I do think that is, you need somebody that you can call and say, am I doing this right? What do you think? I did this and this reacted this way. People to help guide you. I've had different women over the years that say, because it can be brutal, right? I've had women over the years say, how do you do it? And, it's not always been easy to mentor because, I think everybody needs it, but it hasn't always been easy to mentor people who you don't see every day and talk to every day. It's been easier if they're people that I work with or staff, companies that I've worked for. And that has been easier to do when I see somebody going in a particular direction. And, just because it has been trial by fire for me, and even to the point where people probably pushed me off of the deep end to see if I would hit the bottom hard or what happened to me. And I think, that those experiences made me, I think, probably stronger than and not a give up. I'm going to keep going,
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's the way you should necessarily do it. I think that the knowledge that we gain, we should, if we can keep giving that, then we can get higher and higher and better and better. And everybody shouldn't have to be trial by fire and starting all over at the bottom. I don't think that's the way to do it. So what I've tried to do with staff and even people who didn't report directly to me, but they were at the company and they wanted guidance or leadership, I've tried to help them to navigate their way through the different issues of, I'll say, working in corporate America, having difficult bosses, dealing with clients. So I've tried to do that. And I do think that's important.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely it is. If you could narrow down some of the lessons that you've learned, 2, 3, maybe it's one big lesson, what would you want to pass on to any young person, young woman watching this? And what would you want her to know that maybe would have helped you?
Well, I can say, and I'm probably what I'm going to say is probably going to sound generational because it's not going to sound like millennials or the Generation Z. So it's kind of old fashioned. So just, I say always be willing to do whatever's there to be done. Be willing to do the job that's there to be done. You put the ego out of the way. Oh, I have a degree. I don't want to do that. Or, I should be doing something different or whatever. I think that you learn from every single experience and every single job. And if you can take that attitude there, so I'm doing this right now, but I'm not going to be doing this forever, but I'm going to learn from this and build on it. And don't get so caught up with what you're doing today, but do it because you're going to learn from it. I would say, I think that's a lessons learned that every experience that I have ever had, even if I'm answering the phones, hello, this is such and such construction company, may I help you? Every experience has been beneficial to me. And that would be my first.
Is there one lesson or a couple lessons in particular that you would love to pass on to a young person watching this right now?
What I would say is always be ready and willing to do whatever is there to do. As I think I'm dating myself. I think younger people, they want it now and they want to be in charge now. And I think that all of my experiences have benefited me doing whatever the job was that I had to do, no matter, how entry level it might have been. I took it to the next thing that I did. So you have to believe in yourself, because you have people doubting you and saying doubtful things. You just have to carry that belief in yourself. The other thing that I would say is you also have to stand up for yourself. You just can't let people ride roughshod over you. You have to be respectful. You're in corporate America or wherever you are, you have to respect the people that work in your surroundings, not be disrespectful, but don't be people's doormat. So you really can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what I've said to women is that, and this is what I have said to women, is that, and I don't want to offend anybody by the statement that I'm getting ready to make, but a lot of times when we are rising up in careers, they would like for us to be kind of the ingenue, kind of sweet and guiding us through, but then they don't want that ingenue to be the project manager or in charge of the job. So, so they're pushing, they're fighting for you, they're pushing forward as long as you are, someone that they can fight for. But when you start speaking up for yourself, they don't always like that as much. And I think you should always speak up for yourself. Never give in to the ingenue, the sweet little image that people would like to put on young women in the industry. Never give in to it.
Great advice. Awesome advice. So construction, I have learned in the last 3 years, and actually, just having been involved for a couple of decades, just friendship wise, relationships in the industry. Construction is so involved in the community and giving back, and certainly in the work that you've done, I feel like, even though those were jobs and obviously your companies and you earn money for building schools, et cetera, that's not charitable work. But construction really is involved in giving back. It's almost more so than any industry I have seen personally. Is there something in particular that maybe Cooper is involved in, community-wise giving back, or something you're involved with personally that is important to you?
So I'll say a couple things. What I would say is, because I've always worked for, I would say either very large companies or companies that have been the prime contractor. Mm-hmm. Which brings in certain resources, you hire companies or whatever. For me, it's always about I buy into the mission, the actual mission of diversity in construction. A lot of these companies, they say they buy into it, but they cheat. They'll have some company on the top and they put their little people underneath and they play this game or whatever. I don't play that game. I buy into making sure that everybody on the job, that they're good, solid, real, diverse people, spread the money around, spread the wealth around, spread the success around. Don't just go with my boys. Mm-hmm. Go with, why can't everybody, why can't you find contractors, subcontractors, trades that are diverse, men, women, minorities, small businesses, and so forth, that can do this work? Because I know they're out there. I went to school with a lot of them. So I know they exist. So if you're saying they don't exist, or you're saying you're not going to use them, is because you don't want to. And you still are playing a game with the system. So I think that's one thing that I make sure that I do, spread the money and wealth around. Mm-hmm. And people. I think that the community is important to me. And, if you don't have jobs, people aren't working, you can't, what are you saying? They don't they don't have health care. They can't take care of their children. So it's a matter of making sure that there's always work, giving people a second chance, an opportunity. A lot of people in the community have, an issue for me is a lot of people in the community may be felons or have some, ex-offenders and so forth. And then to come and work for companies, they have to do a background check and they don't want to hire people. It's always providing a vehicle so people can work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't say we will hire no felons or we will hire, you just can't do that.
Right.
That's section of a whole segment of society that you don't think can work. So it's always making sure that opportunities for companies, diversity, and everybody who does the work, and from a business standpoint and from a people standpoint. So that's been my mission, to work with that. And then the only other thing is personally or professionally, I've always been a professional, or for many years, been a professional facilitator for various nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So working with community development corporations and different active nonprofits, training people and also companies to be able to understand the development and construction process. So it's been important to me over these years to do that.
That's awesome. Are there any projects coming up that Cooper is involved in that you are particularly excited about?
So, my thought, so while Cooper, we do schools and we do other public projects and so forth, a lion's share or a large amount of our work is work that you can't discuss in a public forum or admit to doing it. And I thought about that. I said, anything that I would tell you, they'd kill me.
And then kill me, and then everyone watching. So yeah, we just won't go there.
I just won't go there. What I'll say is that I'm excited about what we offer. So complex projects that are, that just not anybody can do. Mm-hmm. Work that you need somebody to solve the problem. You got to get in and take care of this. I'm excited about those types of projects that it's just not going to be run of the mill, that you need a good contractor, good builder. I'm not going to just let anybody walk in the door to do it. And it's that level of quality and dedication, I guess, commitment, and people asking us to come and do it. Yeah. People wanting you to be there. That's what I like about Cooper, is that I always say that we offer the next level. Mm-hmm. Of not just trying to duke it out for everybody to be the cheapest, but truly wanting to be the best. If you're going to call us, it's going to be done right. That's what I like about where I am now.
That's great. That's perfect. And definitely something to hang your hat on for sure.
Yeah.
We have had some marvelous years in the construction industry. The market's been incredible. Obviously, the last few months have been extremely interesting.
Yeah.
And we've experienced unprecedented times, obviously. When you look ahead, are there certain trends that you see where this market is headed, or is it that difficult to foresee anything because of where we are?
It's difficult, but I think that we're going to have to, rather than just develop and go out and keep building out with new, I think that we need to step back a bit and look at the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure, do a lot more renovations, a lot more work with our existing buildings, stop just spreading out. But, I've been kind of that way anyway, about just spreading out. See something green, let's build on it. See something green over there, let's build on it. I don't think that that's the best way to do things. I think that I would hope and I believe that that is the direction. I think that we're going to have to do something about what's going on ultimately with the economy, whether people want to make an investment or not, from the base of. I think that we, as a community, and I'm looking at the country as a community, are going to have to work together to come up with a strategy for us to, and it'll have to involve building and construction as a part of that, as a strategy to work on our existing infrastructure and to bring it up to levels of where it needs to be, and provide jobs and I think that that's the direction of our industry. Helping the economy to get back on track and making a contribution to the existing infrastructure throughout the U.S.
Absolutely. Yep. And it'll be interesting to see how we navigate sort of the next year to 5 years, if you will, given what we've now all experienced.
Yes. Living through a pandemic. Yes.
It has been interesting, as I said. Pamela, thank you so much for your time. It was awesome to speak with you. I'm so glad our audience got a chance to know you and learn about Cooper, certainly. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone for watching this edition of Building the DMV, presented by Selective Hauling.